The dying screams echoed through the crystal halls of Viridian Prime as another Kaleri collapsed to the floor. Ambassador Laeth watched in horror as the beautiful flower-like being withered away, its petals turning black and falling like tears. The plague had taken another life, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Laeth moved through the medical center on her thin, root-like legs. Her own petals were beginning to show the first signs of the sickness, small dark spots that would soon spread and kill her too. Around her, thousands of her people lay dying on beds made of living wood. The air smelled of death and decay, so different from the sweet fragrance that normally filled their world. "How many more today?" she asked Dr. Petal, the chief healer. "Of their people?" 47 in this wing alone," Dr. Petal replied, her voice barely a whisper. "The plague moves faster now. We have maybe 2 weeks before our entire race is gone." Laeth closed her eyes and felt the weight of her people's fate pressing down on her. The Kaleri had never known violence or war. They were healers, gardeners, and artists who had spent 10,000 years growing their civilization like a beautiful garden. They had medicines that could heal any wound and technologies that could make plants grow in dead soil. But they had no weapons, no armies, and no experience with death on this scale. The plague had appeared 6 months ago without warning. It attacked their plant-like biology in ways their healers could not understand. It spread through their root, networks that connected every Kaleri to their world. It was designed to kill them, and it was winning. "We need help," Laeth said, looking at the communication device in her hand. "We need to send the message now," Dr. Petal nodded weakly. "But who will come? Who will risk their lives for a dying people they have never met?" Laeth walked to the great transmitter at the center of their capital city. The device was a living tree that grew 1,000 feet into the sky, its branches reaching toward the stars. She placed her hand on its bark and felt the connection to the galaxy's communication network. "This is Ambassador Laeth of the Kaleri people on Viridian Prime," she began, her voice carrying across the stars. "We are a peaceful race of healers and botanists. A terrible plague is destroying our world and our people. We have perhaps 2 weeks before our entire civilization dies." She paused, feeling another wave of sickness wash over her. The dark spots on her petals were growing larger. "We call out to any advanced civilizations who might help us. We need medical aid, healing technologies, and doctors who understand biological warfare. We have valuable knowledge about medicine and plant biology that we can share in return. Please, if anyone can hear this message, we are begging for your help. We do not want to die." The message traveled through space at the speed of light, reaching listening posts and communication stations across the galaxy. Most species ignored it. Others were too far away to help. But on the outer rim of human space, aboard the UES Defender, Captain Jake Morrison was drinking his morning coffee when the transmission came through. "Captain, we're receiving a distress signal," called Lieutenant Amy Foster from the communication station. "It's from a system about 3 days away." Morrison set down his coffee and walked to the bridge. The UES Defender was a medical frigate, one of humanity's newest class of ships. It looked like a hospital and a warship had been combined into one vessel. The hull was painted white with red medical crosses, but it also carried enough weapons to fight off pirates and hostile forces. "Play the message," Morrison ordered. The bridge crew listened in silence as Ambassador Laeth's desperate plea filled the air. Morrison could hear the pain in her voice, the hopelessness of a leader watching her people die. "Any information about this Kaleri species?" Morrison asked. "Computer shows they're plant-based humanoids," replied Lieutenant Foster. "No contact with humans before this. They're listed as a peaceful species with advanced medical knowledge." Morrison walked to the tactical display and studied the star map. Viridian Prime was 3 days away at maximum speed. His medical frigate was part of a small fleet that included 2 other ships, the UES Healing Hand and the UES Mercy Strike. All 3 were loaded with medical supplies, doctors, and enough firepower to protect themselves in dangerous space. "What's our current mission status?" Morrison asked. "We're on patrol duty for another 2 weeks," replied Commander Steve Carter, his second in command. But this sounds like an emergency, Morrison nodded. Get me Dr. Lisa Park in the medical bay? Dr. Park appeared on the screen a moment later. She was a tall woman with short brown hair and tired eyes. She had been the chief medical officer of the fleet for 3 years, and she had seen every kind of wound and disease that space could throw at them. Doctor, did you hear the transmission? Morrison asked. I did, Captain. It sounds like a biological weapon designed to target their specific biology, very sophisticated and very deadly. Can we help them? Dr. Park was quiet for a moment. Maybe. We'd need to see samples of the plague and understand how it works. But Captain, if this is a biological weapon, whoever used it might still be in the area. Morrison understood what she meant. His medical ships were armed for a reason. Space was dangerous, and medical missions often took them into hostile territory. Pirates, slavers, and worse things lurked in the darkness between stars. Set course for Viridian Prime, maximum speed, Morrison ordered. Send a message to the other ships in our fleet. Tell them we have a medical emergency. Yes, sir, replied Lieutenant Foster. Morrison watched the stars shift on the main screen as the ship turned toward its new destination. He had been a medical officer for 15 years, but he had started his career as a combat soldier. He knew that sometimes the best way to save lives was to be ready to take them. Send a reply to the Kaleri, Morrison said. Tell them help is coming. 3 days later, the human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Viridian system. What they saw made them pause in amazement. The star system was like a garden in space. Green and blue planets orbited a warm yellow sun. Space stations that looked like giant flowers floated between the worlds. Everything was beautiful and peaceful, but their sensors also showed something else. The main planet, Viridian Prime, was dying. The energy readings were all wrong. The planet's life signs were fading fast. Medical emergency confirmed, reported Dr. Park from the medical bay. I'm reading massive biological collapse across the entire planet. Morrison looked at the peaceful system and felt a chill run down his spine. Whoever had done this to the Kaleri had turned their garden world into a graveyard. Take us in, he ordered, and keep our weapons ready. Something tells me this isn't over. As the human fleet approached Viridian Prime, their sensors began picking up the planet's communication attempts. The Kaleri were trying to contact them, but their transmissions were weak and filled with static. They're scared, reported Lieutenant Foster. Their messages keep asking if we're here to help or to finish what the plague started. Morrison frowned. He looked at his ship's profile on the tactical display. The used Defender was clearly a military vessel, despite its medical mission. Its weapons were visible from space, and its armored hull looked ready for war. They think we're here to attack them, he realized. Can you blame them? Asked Commander Carter. We look like a battle fleet, not a medical mission. Morrison nodded. The Kaleri had called for healers, but what they got was a group of armed human warships. He could only imagine how terrifying that must be for a peaceful species that had never known war. Open a channel, Morrison ordered. Let's try to convince them we're here to help. The communication channel crackled with static as Captain Morrison tried to establish contact with the Kaleri. On the main screen, he could see Viridian Prime growing larger as they approached. The planet looked sick from space. What should have been green continents were turning brown and black. The beautiful blue oceans were clouded with strange colors. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earthship Defender, he said into the microphone. We received your distress call. We are here to provide medical assistance. The reply came, back in a voice filled with fear and confusion. Unknown vessels, your ships show massive weapon signatures. Are you here to destroy what remains of our world? Morrison looked at Commander Carter, who shook his head. The Universal Translator is having trouble with their language, Carter explained. It's not just words. They seem to communicate with smells and colors, too. Dr. Park's voice came through the intercom from the medical bay. Captain, I'm reading the biological data from the planet. This plague is worse than I thought. It's attacking their entire ecosystem, not just the people. On Viridian Prime, Ambassador Lyeth stood in the emergency council chamber deep underground. The room was filled with the last healthy leaders of her people. Elder Mirren, the oldest and wisest of the Kaleri, sat at the center of the circle. His flower-like head was drooping and his petals were edged with the black spots of the plague. "The ships are huge," reported Defense Coordinator Zara. "Our scanners show weapons that could destroy our entire planet. Each ship has enough firepower to level our cities." But they claim to be healers," said Elder Mirren weakly. "Why would healers need such weapons?" Lyeth felt her heart sink. She had hoped for gentle beings like themselves, creatures who understood medicine and peace. Instead, the sky above their world was filled with warships that looked ready to finish what the plague had started. "Maybe they are conquerors," whispered Dr. Petal. "Maybe they want to take our world after we are all dead." "No," Lyeth said firmly. "They answered our call for help. They came from across the galaxy when no one else would. We have to believe they mean to help us." Above them, the human fleet moved into orbit around Viridian Prime. Morrison watched the planet's surface through the ship's cameras. Cities that looked like gardens were dying before his eyes. Beautiful buildings that grew from living trees were turning black and crumbling. "Captain," called Lieutenant Foster from the sensor station. "I'm picking up several small ships launching from the planet." "They're moving away from us fast," Morrison frowned. "Are they attacking us?" "No, sir. They're running away. Their ships don't have any weapons at all." Commander Carter studied the tactical display. "They're scared of us, Captain. They see our weapons and think we're here to hurt them." Morrison felt frustrated. His ships were armed because space was dangerous. Medical missions often took them into hostile territory where pirates and slavers operated. The weapons were for protection, not conquest. But to the peaceful Kaleri, they looked like instruments of war. "Dr. Park, report to the bridge," Morrison ordered. Dr. Park arrived a few minutes later, carrying a medical tablet filled with data. "Captain, I've been studying the plague from our sensor readings. It's definitely artificial. Someone designed this to kill the Kaleri specifically." "A biological weapon?" "Yes, and a very sophisticated one. It attacks their plant-like biology in multiple ways. It's like someone studied the Kaleri for years and then created the perfect weapon to destroy them." Morrison felt anger rising in his chest. He had seen the results of biological warfare before. It was one of the cruelest ways to kill, slow and painful and unstoppable. "How long do they have?" he asked. "At the current rate of spread, maybe 10 days, possibly less." Morrison made his decision. "We're going down there. Prepare a medical shuttle with our best equipment. And Lieutenant Foster, you're coming with us." "Sir?" Foster looked surprised. "Why me?" "Because you're a combat medic. You know how to help people in impossible situations." Down on the planet's surface, the emergency council was in chaos. Half the members wanted to flee the system before the human ships attacked. The other half wanted to trust that the humans were really there to help. "We should surrender," said one council member. "If they want our world, maybe they will let some of us live." "No," Elder Mirren said with more strength than he had shown in weeks. "We called for help, and help has come." "We must have faith," Ambassador Lyeth stood up. "I volunteer to meet with them. If they are conquerors, let them take me first. If they are healers, then I will welcome them to our world." "You are too important," protested Dr. Petal. "We cannot risk losing you." "We are all going to die anyway," Lyeth replied sadly. "At least this way I might be able to save some of you." High above, Morrison's shuttle left the UES Defender and began its descent to the planet's surface. The small ship carried no weapons, and its hull was painted white with red medical crosses. Morrison hoped the Kaleri would understand that this was a peaceful mission. "Captain," called the shuttle pilot, "I'm getting targeting locks from the planet's surface. They have defensive weapons pointed at us." Morrison wasn't surprised. Even peaceful species usually had some way to protect themselves. "Continue descent. Send a message that we are unarmed and here to help." Lieutenant Foster sat across from Morrison in the shuttle's small cabin. She was a tough woman who had served as a combat medic in 3 different wars. She had saved lives under enemy fire and treated wounded soldiers in the worst possible conditions. "Captain," she said quietly, "what if they won't let us help them? What if they're too scared of us?" Morrison looked out the shuttle's window at the dying planet below. "Then we'll have to find another way. But we're not leaving until we try." The shuttle landed in a clearing outside the Kaleri capital city. Morrison and Foster stepped out wearing medical uniforms and carrying medical equipment. The air smelled of death and decay, and they could see the black spots of the plague spreading across the nearby trees. A small group of Kaleri approached them cautiously. Morrison was amazed by their appearance. They looked like walking flowers with faces beautiful and alien but clearly intelligent. The one in front, who Morrison guessed was their leader, was covered in black spots that marked her as infected. "I am Ambassador Lyeth," she said in accented English. "You are the healers we called for?" Morrison nodded. "I am Captain Jake Morrison. This is Lieutenant Amy Foster, our combat medic. We're here to help you fight this plague." Lyeth looked at their uniforms, which were clearly military style. "You are soldiers, not doctors." "We are both," Morrison replied. "In human space, our medical ships must be able to defend themselves. We carry weapons to protect our patients, not to hurt them." Foster stepped forward and knelt beside a dying Kaleri child. She opened her medical kit and began taking readings. With her scanner, "The plague is attacking their cellular structure," she reported. "But I think we can help." Lyeth watched in amazement as Foster worked. The human woman moved with military precision, but her touch was gentle and her focus was entirely on saving life. "You fight to heal," Lyeth said with wonder. "You are warriors who serve medicine," Morrison nodded. "Sometimes the best way to save lives is to be ready to take them. Our ships are armed because space is dangerous, but we use that strength to protect the innocent." For the first time in months, Lyeth felt hope growing in her chest. These strange humans were not conquerors. They were something she had never imagined, healers who were also warriors, doctors who carried weapons not to destroy but to defend. "Will you help us?" she asked. "We will," Morrison promised. "But first, we need to understand what we're fighting. This plague was designed to kill your people. Someone out there wanted your species to die." Lyeth felt a chill that had nothing to do with the plague. "You mean this was not natural?" "No," Morrison said grimly. "This was an attack. And if someone is willing to use biological weapons against peaceful people, they might come back to finish the job." Above them, the human medical fleet waited in orbit, their weapons ready to defend the patients they had come to save. Dr. Lisa Park stood in the middle of what had once been a beautiful Kaleri hospital. The walls were made of living wood that had grown into intricate patterns, but now they were turning black with disease. The air recycling system that had once filtered the atmosphere through giant leaves was failing as the plants died. "This is worse than I imagined," she said to her team of human doctors and medics. "The plague isn't just killing the people. It's destroying their entire ecosystem." Nurse Commander Rita Jones looked up from her scanner. "Doctor, the biological readings are off the charts. This thing is designed to attack every form of plant life on the planet. It's like someone wanted to make sure nothing survived." Dr. Park nodded grimly. She had been working with the Kaleri for 3 days now, and every hour brought new horrors. The plague was more complex than any biological weapon she had ever seen. It attacked the Kaleri's plant-like cells in dozens of different ways, making it almost impossible to treat. "Dr. Kevin Walsh, report." She called to her second-in-command. Dr. Walsh was working with a team of Kaleri healers in the far corner of the hospital. "We've identified 17 different components to this plague," he replied. "Each one targets a different part of their biology. It's like fighting 17 diseases at once." Sergeant Tony Miller, a combat medic who had served in the border wars, was helping to set up equipment. "Doc, this reminds me of the bioweapons the Syndicate used on New Victoria. Multiple vectors designed to overwhelm medical response. Dr. Park felt a chill run down her spine. The syndicate had been a criminal organization that sold weapons to anyone with enough money. They had been destroyed 5 years ago, but their technology had spread across the galaxy. Set up triage stations according to military protocol, she ordered. We treat the most critical cases first, then work our way down. And I want armed guards at every entrance. The Kaleri healers working with them looked confused. Dr. Petal, who had been their guide, approached Dr. Park carefully. Why do you need guards? We are in a hospital. Because whoever did this to your people might not want us to succeed, Dr. Park explained. In human medicine, we always prepare for the worst. Elder Mirren was brought in on a stretcher, his condition deteriorating rapidly. Dr. Park examined him personally, using every scanner and diagnostic tool the humans had brought. What she found made her stomach turn. The plague is learning, she announced to her team. It's adapting to every treatment we try. This isn't just a weapon, it's an intelligent weapon. Dr. Walsh looked up from his work. You mean it's evolving? Faster than we can keep up with. Every time we find a way to slow it down, it changes and becomes resistant to our treatment. Lieutenant Foster entered the hospital carrying a wounded Kaleri civilian. Doctor, we've got problems outside. Some of the local population is starting to panic. They think we're making things worse. Dr. Park understood their fear. The human medical team worked with military efficiency that looked harsh to the peaceful Kaleri. They moved in formation, followed strict protocols, and treated every medical procedure like a battle operation. Amy, set up a demonstration, Doctor, Park ordered. Show them how we work. Let them see that our methods save lives. Foster nodded and began organizing a treatment demonstration. She worked with Kaleri healers to show how human combat medicine could be adapted to their biology. The Kaleri watched in amazement as the humans coordinated their efforts with the precision of a military unit. You work like soldiers, observed Dr. Petal. Every movement has a purpose. We are soldiers, Foster replied while treating a young Kaleri patient. But we fight disease instead of enemies. We use the same discipline and teamwork that wins. Battles to save lives. The demonstration was interrupted by an alarm from the human fleet in orbit. Captain Morrison's voice came through the communicators. All medical teams, we have a problem. Long-range sensors are detecting ships approaching the system. Unknown configuration, but they're armed. Dr. Park felt her blood run cold. How long? Until they arrive? 6 hours, maybe less. Dr. Park, we need to accelerate the treatment program. If these ships are hostile, we might not have time to finish what we started. Dr. Park looked around the hospital at the hundreds of dying Kaleri. 6 hours was not enough time to develop a cure for 17 different plague components, but she had an idea. Kevin, Rita, Tony, gather the team. We're going to do something we've never tried before. What's that, Doctor? Asked Dr. Walsh. We're going to treat this like a combat situation. In battle, medics don't have time to cure every wound perfectly. They stabilize the patient and move on to the next one. We're going to apply that principle here. The human medical team went to work with renewed urgency. They divided the plague into primary and secondary threats, focusing on the components that killed fastest. They couldn't cure the disease completely, but they could buy time for the Kaleri to recover. Sergeant Miller worked with a team of combat medics to set up mobile treatment stations throughout the city. In the field, we move medicine to the patients. Not the other way around, he explained to the Kaleri healers. Time is everything in combat medicine. Dr. Park watched her teamwork and felt pride in their efficiency. They moved like the military unit they were, each person knowing their role and executing it perfectly. The Kaleri healers began to understand that the human's military nature wasn't about violence. It was about saving lives under impossible conditions. Dr. Park, called Dr. Walsh from across the hospital, I think we're making progress. The stabilization. Treatments are working? The plague is slowing down? Good. How many patients have we treated? 3,000 so far. But there are still tens of thousands more across the planet. Dr. Park nodded. They were making progress, but it wasn't enough. The approaching ships worried her. If they were hostile, the medical mission would become a battle, and battles were not good for patients. Elder Miron, who had been unconscious for hours, suddenly opened his eyes. The black spots on his petals had stopped spreading, and his breathing was stronger. "The human medicine works," he said weakly. "I can feel the plague retreating." Dr. Petal knelt beside him. Her own condition improved by the human treatments. "Elder, the humans say that ships are coming. Unknown ships with weapons." Elder Mirren tried to sit up. "What kind of ships?" Dr. Park approached his bedside. "We don't know yet. But our captain is concerned they might be connected to whoever created this plague." The old Kalari leader looked at Dr. Park with new understanding. "You believe someone will come to finish what the plague started. It's possible. Biological weapons are often followed by conventional attacks. The plague weakens the target, then the ships come to claim the territory." Elder Mirren was quiet for a long moment. "We have never faced war before. We do not know how to fight." "You don't have to fight," Dr. Park said firmly. "That's what our ships are for. We came here to heal you, and we'll protect you while we do it." Lieutenant Foster entered the hospital quickly. "Doctor, Captain Morrison wants to speak with you. It's urgent." Dr. Park followed Foster outside, where a communication link had been established with the fleet. Captain Morrison's face appeared on the screen, looking grim. "Doctor, we've identified the approaching ships. They're Vrex collective vessels, slavers and raiders. They're probably here to scavenge what's left after the plague finishes its work." Dr. Park felt anger rising in her chest. "They're the ones who released the plague. It fits their pattern. They use biological weapons to weaken civilizations, then move in to capture survivors for the slave trade. The Kalari would be valuable slaves because of their medical knowledge." Dr. Park looked back at the hospital filled with dying patients. "How long do we have?" 4 hours, maybe less." "Doctor, I need to know. Can you stabilize enough patients to evacuate them?" Dr. Park thought quickly. Evacuation would save some lives, but it would mean abandoning the majority of the population. It went against everything she believed in as a doctor. "No," she said firmly, "we don't abandon patients. We stay and finish the job." Morrison nodded as if he had expected that answer. "Then we'll have to fight while you work. Can your medical teams continue operations during combat?" Dr. Park smiled grimly. "Captain, we're combat medics. We've worked under fire before. Just keep those ships away from my patients." As the conversation ended, Dr. Park turned to see Elder Mirren standing behind her. The old Kalari had heard everything. "You will fight for us," he said with wonder. "You will risk your lives to protect strangers." "You're not strangers anymore," Dr. Park replied. "You're our patients, and we never abandon our patients." Elder Myron's petals brightened for the first time in months. "We were wrong about you. We thought healers and warriors were different things, but you have shown us they can be the same." Dr. Park nodded. "Sometimes the best way to save lives is to be ready to take them. Our ships carry weapons, so our hospitals can save lives? Now let's get back to work. We have a lot of patients to treat before those ships arrive." The alarm screamed through the UES Defender as Captain Morrison stood on the bridge watching the enemy ships approach. The Vrex collective fleet was smaller than his medical convoy, but their ships were built for one purpose: destruction. Their hulls were dark gray with sharp edges, and their weapon ports glowed with deadly energy. "Captain," called Commander Carter from the tactical station, "enemy fleet consists of 4 heavy cruisers and 6 destroyers. They're moving in attack formation." Morrison studied the tactical display. The Vrex ships were positioning themselves to attack both the human fleet and the planet below. It was a classic pirate tactic: destroy the defenders, then claim the prize. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Foster from communications, "the Vrex are sending a message. Put it on screen." The main display flickered, and a face appeared that made Morrison's stomach turn. The Vrex commander looked like a cross between a spider and a snake, with multiple eyes and a mouth full of sharp teeth. His skin was covered in scales that shifted color as he spoke. "Human vessels," the Vrex commander said in a voice like grinding metal. "You are interfering with our harvest operation. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed." Morrison stepped forward. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth Medical Fleet. We are conducting humanitarian operations on Viridian Prime. The Kaleri people are under our protection." The Vrex commander laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "The plant people are dying from our bioweapon. Soon they will be weak enough to capture. Their healing knowledge will bring us much profit in the slave markets." "You created the plague," Morrison said, his voice hard with anger. "Of course, the Kaleri are too peaceful to resist conventional attack. The bioweapon makes them helpless. Those who survive will make excellent slaves." Morrison felt rage building in his chest. He had spent his entire career saving lives, and now he faced creatures who used disease as a weapon against innocent people. "The Kaleri are not helpless," Morrison said firmly. "And they are not alone. You have 30 seconds to withdraw from this system." The Vrex commander's eyes gleamed with amusement. "Your ships are medical vessels. You cannot match our firepower." "Try us," Morrison replied, and cut the communication on the planet's surface. Dr. Park was working frantically to stabilize as many patients as possible. The human medical team had converted the entire hospital into a combat medical facility, with armed guards at every entrance and emergency evacuation procedures ready. "Doctor," called Dr. Walsh from across the ward, "we're getting reports of Vrex landing pods entering the atmosphere. They're going to attack the surface." Dr. Park looked up from the Kaleri patient she was treating. "How long until they land?" 20 minutes, maybe less." Dr. Park made a decision that went against every medical instinct she had. Evacuate all patients who can be moved. Set up a defensive perimeter around those who cannot be transported. "We're going to have to fight." Sergeant Miller immediately began organizing the combat medics. "Doc, most of these people have never held a weapon. How do we defend a hospital full of patients?" "The same way we always have, Tony. We make the enemy pay for every life they try to take." Elder Mirren, who had been listening from his bed, struggled to sit up. "Dr. Park, we cannot ask you to die for us. You have already saved so many lives." "With respect, Elder, that's not your decision to make. We came here to heal your people, and we're going to finish the job." Lieutenant Foster entered the hospital carrying a military rifle. "Doctor, Captain Morrison sends his regards. He says, the fleet will keep the big ships busy while we handle the ground assault." Dr. Park nodded. "Amy, can you coordinate our defenses?" "Yes, ma'am. I've fought in 3 ground wars. I know how to protect a medical facility." Above them, the space battle began. The used Defender opened fire with its main guns, sending streams of energy toward the Vrex fleet. The other human ships, the UES Healing Hand and the UES Mercy Strike, flanked the enemy formation. Morrison watched the tactical display as his ships engaged the enemy. The Vrex had more firepower, but the human ships were faster and more maneuverable. More importantly, they were fighting to protect their patients, not for profit. "Direct hit on the lead Vrex cruiser," reported Commander Carter. "Their shields are down to 60%. "Target their weapon systems," Morrison ordered. "I want those ships disabled, not destroyed. There might be slaves aboard." The battle was fierce but brief. The human medical ships fought with the precision of military vessels, their weapons targeting enemy systems with surgical accuracy. The Vrex, expecting easy prey, found themselves outgunned and outmaneuvered. "Sir," called Lieutenant Foster from the communication station, "the Vrex are requesting surrender terms." Morrison smiled grimly. "Tell them to withdraw all ground forces and leave the system immediately. If they comply, we'll let them go. If, not, we'll destroy them." On the planet's surface, the ground battle was just beginning. Vrex landing pods had crashed near the hospital, and alien soldiers were advancing on the medical facility. They moved like predators, their scaled bodies flowing across the ground with deadly grace. Lieutenant Foster had positioned human medics at strategic points around the hospital. Each fighting position was also a medical station, ready to treat wounded. It was a uniquely human approach to combat, healing, and fighting at the same time. "Contact front," called Sergeant Miller from the main entrance. "Wreck soldiers, about 20 of them." The battle for the hospital was unlike anything the Kaleri had ever seen. The human medics fought with the same precision they used in surgery, every shot placed with careful accuracy. They used cover and tactics to protect their patients while driving back the attackers. Dr. Park continued treating patients even as the sound of gunfire echoed through the hospital. She had learned long ago that the best way to fight fear was to focus on saving lives. "Doctor," called one of the Kaleri healers, "how can you work while there is fighting?" "This is what we do," Dr. Park replied while checking a patient's vital signs. "We heal people no matter what's happening around us." The Vrex ground assault was failing. Their soldiers were used to fighting weak, defenseless targets. They had never faced combat medics who could shoot back with military precision while simultaneously saving lives. "Vrex forces are retreating," reported Lieutenant Foster. "They're heading back to their landing pods." Dr. Park looked up from her work. "Casualties?" "3 of our people wounded, none killed. The Vrex lost at least half their ground force. In space, the battle was over. The Vrex fleet was retreating, their ships damaged and their attack broken." Captain Morrison watched them go with satisfaction. "Captain," called Commander Carter. "The Vrex commander is sending another message." Morrison nodded. "Put it on screen." The Vrex commander appeared again, but this time his arrogance was gone. His scaled face showed fear and confusion. "Human captain," he said carefully. "We did not expect such resistance from medical vessels." "You made a mistake," Morrison replied. "You thought doctors and warriors were different things. You were wrong. We withdraw from this system. But know that others will come? The Kaleri's medical knowledge is too valuable to ignore." Morrison leaned forward. "Then those others will face the same choice you did. Leave peacefully or be destroyed by healers who fight." The communication ended, and Morrison turned to his bridge crew. "Set course for the planet. Dr. Park's medical teams need supplies and support." On the surface, Dr. Park was finally able to relax. The immediate threat was over, and her patients were safe. She looked around the hospital at the mixture of human and Kaleri medical personnel working together. Elder Mirren approached her slowly. His condition had improved dramatically thanks to the human treatments, and he could walk without assistance. "Dr. Park," he said formally, "we owe you a debt that can never be repaid." "You don't owe us anything," Dr. Park replied. "We're doctors. This is what we do." "No," Elder Mirren said firmly. "What you do is more than healing. You protect those who cannot protect themselves. You fight for those who cannot fight." Dr. Park smiled. "Elder, we learned something important today. Sometimes the best way to save lives is to be ready to take them. Our weapons don't make us killers, they make us better healers." Elder Mirren nodded slowly. "We understand now. We called for healers. And you came, but you are more than healers, you are guardians. We're whatever our patients need us to be," Dr. Park said. "Today you needed us to be warriors. Tomorrow you might need us to be teachers. We'll be ready for either." As the sun set over Viridian Prime, the human medical teams continued their work. The plague was finally under control, the Vrex were gone, and the Kaleri were safe. But more importantly, 2 very different species had learned to work together. The peaceful Kaleri had learned that sometimes violence was necessary to protect life. The human warriors had learned that their strength could serve healing as well as conquest. Together they had created something new, a partnership between healers and fighters that would protect both species in the dangerous galaxy they shared. 3 weeks after the battle, Viridian Prime was transforming before everyone's eyes. The black spots of the plague were disappearing from the trees and buildings. Green leaves were growing again where there had been only death. The sweet fragrance of healthy Kaleri life was returning to the air. Dr. Lisa Park stood in what had once been a dying hospital ward, watching Kaleri children play among flowers that had bloomed overnight. The human medical techniques had not only stopped the plague, but had somehow made the Kalari's natural healing ability stronger than before. "Doctor," called Dr. Kevin Walsh from across the room, "the final treatment reports are ready." Dr. Park walked over to review the data on his tablet. The numbers were better than she had dared to hope. 97% survival rate, she said with amazement. "Kevin, we saved almost everyone." "It wasn't just us," Dr. Walsh replied. "The Kalari healers learned our techniques and improved on them. Working together, we found solutions neither of us could have discovered alone." Captain Morrison entered the hospital, looking more relaxed than he had in weeks. The immediate crisis was over, but he knew the real work was just beginning. The galaxy was full of dangers, and the peaceful Kalari would need protection. "Dr. Park, how are our patients doing?" he asked. "Better than expected, Captain. Elder Marin wants to speak with you. He has a proposal." Morrison found Elder Marin in the hospital's garden, tending to plants that had nearly died from the plague. The old Kalari's petals were bright and healthy now, showing no signs of the disease that had almost killed him. "Captain Morrison," Elder Marin said, looking up from a flower he was healing, "I have been thinking about what happened here." "What about it, Elder?" "We called for healers, and the galaxy sent us warriors. At first we were afraid. We thought warriors and healers were different things, but you have shown us they can be the same." Morrison nodded. "In human space, our medical ships must be able to defend themselves. We learned long ago that sometimes you have to fight to save lives." Elder Marin was quiet for a moment, considering his words carefully. "Captain, my people have a request. We would like to join your medical fleet." Morrison was surprised. "You want to become part of our military?" "Not your military," Elder Marin corrected. "Your healers. We want to learn how to be healers who can also be warriors when necessary." Lieutenant Foster entered the garden, carrying a communication device. "Captain, we're receiving messages from across the galaxy. Word about what happened here is spreading." "What kind of messages?" Morrison asked. "Requests for help, sir. Other peaceful species are asking for medical assistance. Some of them mention threats from raiders and slavers." Morrison looked at Elder Marin with new understanding. "You want to help them?" "Yes," Elder Marin said firmly. "For too long we have been helpless against those who would hurt us. But you have shown us another way. We can be healers and defenders at the same time." Dr. Park joined them in the garden, followed by several Kalari healers, including Dr. Petal. "Captain, the Kalari have made remarkable progress in adapting our medical techniques. They've found ways to combine human technology with their natural healing abilities." "Show him," Elder Marin said to Dr. Petal. Dr. Petal approached a plant that had been damaged by the plague. She placed her hands on its stem and began to glow with a soft green light. The plant straightened and began to bloom as they watched. "We have always been able to heal," Dr. Petal explained. "But your medicines have made our abilities stronger. We can now heal injuries that would have been impossible before." Morrison was amazed. "You're saying the combination of human and Kalari medicine is more powerful than either one alone?" "Much more powerful," Dr. Park confirmed. "Captain, I think Elder Myron's proposal has merit. Joint human Kalari medical teams could help species across the galaxy." Morrison walked to the edge of the garden and looked up at his ships in orbit. The UES Defender, the UES Healing Hand, and the UES Mercy Strike hung in space like guardian angels, ready to protect or heal as needed. "Elder," he said finally, "there's something you need to understand. If you join our fleet, you'll see violence. You'll have to make hard choices about who to save and who to fight." "We understand," Elder Marin replied. "The Vrex taught us that there are beings in this galaxy who see healing as weakness. We cannot let them continue to hurt innocent people." Dr. Park stepped forward. "Captain, I recommend we accept their proposal. The Kalari could provide medical support that we never imagined possible." Morrison made his decision. "Elder Marin, I hereby invite the Kalari people to join the human medical fleet as equal partners. Together we'll bring healing to the galaxy and protect those who cannot protect themselves." Elder Myron's petals brightened with joy. "Captain, We accept your offer, but we have one condition. What's that? We want to build our own medical ships. Ships that can heal and fight, just like yours, Morrison smiled. I think that can be arranged. 6 months later, the first joint human-Kalari medical ship launched from Viridian Prime. The UES Garden of Hope was unlike any vessel ever built. Its hull was a mixture of human metal and living Kalari biotechnology. It carried weapons for defense and medical facilities that could heal injuries thought impossible to treat. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of the new ship alongside Elder Mirren, who had been elected as the Kalari fleet commander. The bridge crew was a mixture of humans and Kalari, working together with the efficiency Morrison had always demanded. "Captain," called Lieutenant Foster from the communication station, "we're receiving a distress call from the Gentle system. A plague outbreak on 3 different worlds." "Kalari or human origin?" asked Elder Mirren. "Unknown, sir. But the symptoms match biological warfare patterns." Morrison and Elder Mirren exchanged looks. In the months since Viridian Prime, they had responded to dozens of similar calls. The galaxy was full of peaceful species being attacked by those who saw their gentleness as weakness. "Set course for the Gentle system," Morrison ordered. Signal the rest of the fleet. It sounds like we have work to do." Dr. Park, now serving as Chief Medical Officer for the entire Joint Fleet, entered the bridge carrying her medical tablet. "Captains, I've been reviewing the distress call. This plague is definitely artificial. Someone is using the same tactics the Vrex used on Viridian Prime." "How long until we arrive?" asked Elder Mirren. 4 days at maximum speed," replied the helmsman, a young Kalari named Bloom. "Too long," Morrison said grimly. "Foster, send a message ahead. Tell them help is coming and tell them not to give up hope." As the Garden of Hope jumped to hyperspace, its mixed crew prepared for another mission. In the medical bay, human doctors worked alongside Kalari healers, sharing knowledge and techniques. In the weapons stations, human gunners trained with Kalari defenders, who had learned that sometimes violence was the only way to protect life. The ship itself was a symbol of what the 2 species had become together. Neither purely peaceful nor purely military, but something new: healers who could fight, warriors who could heal, protectors who understood that the strongest weapon was compassion backed by the will to defend it. Ambassador Lyeth, now serving as the diplomatic officer for the Joint Fleet, sat in her quarters composing a message that would be broadcast across the galaxy. She wanted other peaceful species to know that help was available, that they didn't have to face the darkness alone. "To all civilizations who hear this message," she spoke into the recorder, "we are the human Kalari medical fleet. We come to heal, to protect, and to teach. If you are suffering from disease, we will cure you. If you are threatened by those who would enslave you, we will defend you. We have learned that healing and fighting can be the same thing when done for the right reasons." She paused, thinking of how much had changed since that desperate day when she had first called for help. "We once called for healers," she continued, "and the galaxy sent us warriors. We discovered they were the same thing. Now we offer that same protection to others. You are not alone in the darkness. Help is coming." The message was transmitted across the galaxy, carrying hope to countless worlds. And in the medical bay of the Garden of Hope, human and Kalari healers worked side by side, ready to answer the next call for help. The galaxy was still dangerous, still full of those who would hurt the innocent. But now it also had guardians. Healers who carried weapons not to conquer, but to protect. Warriors who fought not for glory, but for life itself. They had hoped for healers and got armed human warships instead. In the end, they discovered that sometimes the best healers were the ones ready to fight for their patients.